Help us to see and to trust that you are in control and just trust you with our stories, God. In your name we pray. Amen.
Let's celebrate our worship team. Thank you, guys. Again, and welcome. It's good to be with you guys in 2023. We started this series back in the the fall, called Good News to the Poor. And what we've been doing, and very shortly, is we've been looking at like small snippets of where these people have this encounter with Jesus and meet him, some of them for the first time. And then like just asking the question, like, what would they have said their good news was? Like, what was so good about meeting Jesus? And then looking at their story and trying to figure out, like, here's, I think, what they would say, and here's what that means for us. And the reason we've been doing this, looking at their good news, is because each of you can encounter Jesus today and tomorrow and so on and so forth. Some of you have encountered him in the past. And every time you do that, you have some version of good news, or like what was good about encountering him. And it's specific to you, and it's unique to you. And other people may share similarities in your story, but at the end of the day, it's your story and your story alone. Like when you first came to faith, it's like, why was that good? And it's like, oh, because here's who I was, and who you were was different than who I was, and now here's what he did for me. And so every time we look at one of these passages, you see like somebody has something good to say about Jesus, and it's completely different than what the last person said about him. And all of those things are all true. And so the point of doing this series is not just to show you a bunch of different people who have good news about Jesus, but to help you see your life in their story and go, that's what they said was good. What is my good news of Jesus? Like, what have I experienced lately that he's done for me that I could say, like, man, he did this for me over Christmas. He did this for me in 2022. He did this for me in 2023. And that's the point. We want you to actually see Jesus as not someone that's like, I just give you salvation, which is strong and a really good gift. But not just that, but like he is actually wanting to give you things, good gifts now, consistently for the rest of your life. It's not, I gave you one good gift, hope you had a great one, and I hope it lasts you for 80 years until you die. That's not it. That's not what he has for you. He has gifts that he wants to give you consistently so that you could actually have good news to constantly shout, like, what's good about Jesus today? Oh, today it's this, so that you can have something specific. And so that's what we've been doing. That's this series. We're going to go for a little bit longer on this series, and then we'll switch to something else in the middle of the year. Today we're going to look at a man who's a leper. If you're familiar with what a leper is, it's a disease that basically eats away at your body, and it deteriorates your limbs and all the rest of it, but we'll get to that in just a second. But this is in Mark 1, verses 40 through 42. Mark writes, a man with leprosy came to him, being Jesus, and begged Jesus on his knees, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. Immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. This is the word of the Lord. Some of you know the story, and I've shared it before, but back before my wife and I got together, back before she really knew that I existed and wanted anything to do with me, I loved her with a love that was like rivaled love. Like I loved her so much, and she was like, "You're ugly. Go away." That's basically how he. You okay? You good? All right, great. So that's like that was the intro into that. Like I loved her, and she didn't really care anything about me. But there was this time right before that I wanted to make this huge gesture and like go to her. She lived in Chicago. I lived here in Tennessee. And I wanted to like fly to see her and like show her that I love her, and maybe that would like tip over the edge and she would love me, and we'd have this awesome love story that began in Chicago because I did this huge thing of flying to go see her. It didn't end up going that way at all. But here's the way it went down. I wanted to go see her, so I call or text her. I was like, hey, can I come and see you? It's my spring break. I'd love to come see you. And she was like, yes, absolutely. You can come do that. And I was like, great. She said, yes, this is crazy. I was like, well, I'm going to fly up there. I'll get a hotel and stay in the city, and then we can hang out, something like that, and we can maybe go to dinner. And I'm like, can we go to dinner? And she's like, yeah, we can go to dinner. I was like, oh, sweet, it's a date, but I didn't say that. And so that's what I'm thinking the entire time. I'm thinking this is a date. I'm locked in. She's thrilled that I'm flying to see her. Got the hotel, which isn't for us because we're not married yet, but we're still going to hang out. We're going to go on a dinner date. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. She's going to fall in love with me right there. Back then, caveat, there was this thing called Facebook where you could select your relationship status and you could tell people that you were in a relationship. Well, Rainey, I checked hers right before I bought the ticket to go see her, and it said she was in a relationship. But she was in a relationship with Kinsey. And I was like, Kinsey's got to be a girl. And they used to do this thing where you'd be like, you know, my best friend, we're in a complicated relationship or whatever. And they do this thing. And so it wasn't uncommon for Kinsey to be, you know, like her best girlfriend, and they're just being silly and telling all the guys, like, stay away, I'm not seeking to date anyone. That's what I thought. The reason I thought that is because I know a bunch of Kinseys. All of them are girls. Not a single guy Kinsey. Not a one. Okay? Chicago's weird. We'll get there in a second. But I'm like, this is a girl. Like, there's definitely no way, like, this is a guy. She's not dating a guy. She's just in this, you know, she's just best friends with Kinsey, whoever that is. And so I fly there. And then I get to my hotel, and I'm locked in. I'm doing this stuff. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. I'm about to catch the train and go down there and see her and get to our date. That's definitely going to end in us kissing. Like, I was like, it's going to. And then I'm like, you know what? I had my laptop. I was like, I should just check. I should just check and see if Kinsey's a bro. There's no, 99%, it's definitely not a bro. Kinsey's a girl for sure. That has to be true. Click on it, it's a dude. And I was like, bro, Kinsey, come on. Sorry if your name's Kinsey and you're a dude. That's fine, but it's not really the point of the story. But I was like, oh, this isn't a date. I bought a plane ticket from Memphis to Chicago and got a hotel thinking this is a date and I'm going to spend the weekend like hanging out with this girl that we're going to date and fall in love. And she's like, you're friend zoned, bro. Like, this is just friends. Like, we're not going to date at all. And so that was on the way to dinner that I realized that. And I was like, awesome. This is great. I'll just change all my plans, and it's not going to end in a kiss. I'm just never going to try and pursue her ever again. But anyways, we ended up going to dinner, and it was fine. And she was like, I'll pay for myself, which is, guys, if you're ever on a date and the girl tells you at the front end, I'll pay for myself, that means you're strictly a friend. Definitely not going to happen. Don't care anything about you other than you're alive, and I'm supposed to love you because Jesus does. Like, that's the extent to which she felt about me. And it was fine. We were friends, and it was great, and whatever. Whatever. It didn't. Anyways, she dated Kinsey, the girl named Kinsey. She dated that dude for a little bit longer, and then eventually we got together, and Kinsey and her broke up. Shocker. His name's Kinsey. But that's, you know, they broke up, and now we're married and have a child, and so Kinsey can, you know, sorry if you're watching, which you wouldn't. But anyways, my point in all of this is I assumed it led me to a huge, huge thing that cost a lot of money. I assumed Kinsey is a girl. And the reason I assume that is because my experience told me all the Kinseys that you grew up with and the one you dated in high school, to fact check, they're all girls. All of them. All 100%. All of them were girls. And so because my experience led me to believe that Kinsey was a girl, I didn't even check and click on the bro's picture. I just assumed. Of course, Kinsey, who she's dating, is a girl and not a guy. And then it led to $500 being spent on something that effectively wound up being a fun bro trip for me. And then I got snowed in Chicago, had to fly, couldn't fly home to Memphis, but there was a flight going to New York. I'm going the opposite direction, folks. I'm going the wrong way. So I flew to New York and had to stay there. Snowstorm there. I was there for a couple of days. This ended up being like a $750 trip, and I was basically like, I'm going to be homeless in New York, okay? I'm just going to be living on the street, begging for change, and changing my name to Kinsey or something. But all that to say, I assumed a lot about somebody based on my experience. It's a long story to let you know that, like, there's something happening here that's very similar. This man assumes something about this rabbi Jesus based on his experience. Because rabbis and lepers did not mix, okay? Here's what they said about rabbis and lepers. Rabbis, especially during this time, despised lepers. They saw them as those under God's special judgment. Not just judgment of God, the special judgment of God, deserving no pity and no mercy. Back then, they thought two things about a leper. You are the walking dead, and you deserve this because this is punishment of God against you. Can you imagine that conversation? Get away from me, you walking dead person. God, you've deserved this. Walk away from me. Like, that would just be hard. Jewish custom said that you should not even greet a leper, so they actually wouldn't talk ever. One rabbi bragged that he would not even buy food on a street where he saw a leper, and another boasted that he threw rocks at lepers to keep them far from him. This is this man's experience with rabbis. The leper has constantly had this experience with rabbis. And so he finally goes to this one rabbi named Jesus. And he doesn't, if you notice, he doesn't question his power. He's not like, hey, do you have any power to heal me? He doesn't question it at all. He believes that Jesus has the power to do it. What he's wondering about is his willingness to do it. And if you notice, he's not even really asking. He's not saying, are you willing to heal me? Are you willing to cleanse me? He's not even asking the question because he's so convinced and he assumes so strongly, my experience has been rabbis hate my guts and throw rocks at me. But he wants to communicate to Jesus something because he's at his wit's end, and he's like, if you are willing, no other rabbi has been willing to even come close to me. Most throw rocks or don't talk to me at all and they act like I don't exist. But if you are willing, I know that you can make me well. And that's where we wind up in Jesus. And then you see this story play out where Jesus says, I am willing. And so if you were to talk to the leper and say like, hey, what was good about your meeting with Jesus? I bet he'd have a lot of things. He didn't throw rocks at me. Strong start. He didn't throw rocks at me. He saw me. He saw that I existed and greeted me and talked to me. Like he would have so many different things to say. But at the end of the day, I think if the leper's good news, like what was so good about meeting Jesus, is like I assumed he wouldn't be willing to help me. But he actually was. He was actually more than willing to help me. He desired to help me, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I think if you were to ask him, like, what's the good news? Like, what was meeting Jesus like? I was like, man, I really assumed that he wouldn't help me at all. But it turns out that he was actually more than willing to help me. And I think this is important for us because, again, I think you can find your story in this man's story. I think for you, one of the things that you need to hear consistently is that Jesus actually isn't just willing to help you, he's more than willing to help you. He's always willing to actually break into your story and actually willing to help you. He is always willing to do that. And I think for us, and like, again, I know some of you are new and all that stuff, but for the majority of the people in this room that are part of this ministry, and I've known you for a bit, for us, this is important that we know this, that God is always willing, more than willing to help us. Because I think in many ways we share this man's assumption of Jesus. We assume the exact same thing. We don't question his power. All of us are like, yeah, we believe the Bible. He created the heavens and the earth. He runs the universe and all this stuff. But so no question of power. I know that you're able to do this stuff. I don't question or doubt your ability. I just doubt whether you actually want to help. I assume that you probably don't want to help me. I assume that like you do have power and could do something, but my assumption is that you're probably not going to do anything about that. And I think we think that for a number of reasons. Some of us like, I just don't think he cares about me. Some people think that like I've probably done something wrong, and if I can figure out what it is, what I did wrong, I can say I'm sorry for it, then he might help me. We think that we're not worthy for help. We think our problem's too small, or maybe we're just not special enough. But we see other people getting help. It's like, well, they got help with their need, but I'm not getting help with mine, and I assume that he just doesn't want to actually help me. And this is exactly what this man is doing. He had an assumption that's like, I assume that you're not willing to help. And I think for us, we think that exactly, like we pray and we're like, I know that you can do it. I just don't know that you are going to help. I know that you can help. I just don't know that you are going to help. And the issue with that line of thinking, and I think the reason why Jesus goes out of his way to prove this man's assumption wrong, the reason if you think that, you're able to help, I just don't think you will help. The issue with that is if you feel that way, what it leads you to do is it leads you to turn to far more lesser dangerous things in order to actually get you help. Because they're always willing to help you. You're like, I want to turn to something. I need help from something. I need something, but I don't think that God's going to do it. So I'll turn to something else, something more dangerous, something lesser, and then expect it to actually do something for us. And the issue with that is the things that we end up turning to are dangerous, and they actually have zero power to help us. They're far more willing. We're like, that thing will definitely try and help me. It's just powerless to actually do so. So for instance, some of you, when you're like, I need help, I need to feel comfort in my life, you turn to your anger. It's like, I'm going to turn to I'm going to be angry and belligerent towards this person, and that will be the thing that ultimately brings me comfort. Or they did something wrong, I'm going to turn to my anger, I'm going to cast them out, I'm going to cut them off, I'll turn to my anger. Your anger is always willing to try and help you. The issue is that it's powerless to actually fix and help the way that you want it to. I don't either. So, for some of you, it's your self-pity. You turn, like, if something goes wrong in your life, and you turn to self-pity. Because self-pity is like this thing where it's like, oh, everybody should feel bad for me, and this is hard for me, and it's this and that. And your self-pity is more than willing to wrap you up, and it's willing to try and help you. The issue is it doesn't do anything for you. It can't actually help you. But it's always willing. We turn to things that are always willing to help. They're just powerless to actually do so. Porn is always willing to help. It's just powerless to actually get you what you actually need in your heart and in your soul. always willing to help, though. A guy in a relationship, probably always willing to do whatever he needs to do to make you feel loved. The issue is, he doesn't have the power to actually do that for you, to actually make you feel loved in any of those things. Sex, drinking, drugs, partying, all that stuff, it's always there. It's always willing, and it's this weekend and the next weekend and so on and so forth. It's always willing. I'm always willing to try and help you. The issue is, do all those things and it have zero power to actually help you in those ways. Cutting yourself, harming yourself, the razor's always there. There's something always there. Always willing to help, but powerless to actually do the thing that you actually need to have happen. And so when we think, God, you're powerful enough to fix this, I just assume that you won't, and then you're not willing to, we end up turning to things that are always willing to help, but we just flip it, and we turn to the opposite thing. Always willing to help, but can't do anything to actually help us. And this is why Jesus goes out of his way to really prove to this man, like, look, you have this assumption about me, and I want to just kill it. I want it to go away. I don't want you to assume that I'm not willing to help. I actually want this to be something where you experience me and you think of me and it's like, are you willing to help? When that question pops in your mind, you go, yes, I am definitely willing to help you. And he goes out of his way to do this. And so I want to look at a couple of things that he does to kind of prove to this man that he was willing to help him. The first is you see that Jesus gets angry. Verse 41, he says, Jesus was indignant. The other, if you look at Matthew, it says that he was filled with compassion. If you look at Luke, it says he was filled with compassion. The reason was because he is angry, but it's like a righteous anger. He's not angry at the man, but he's angry for a number of reasons. One, he's angry at what the disease has ultimately done to this man. In Luke's gospel, when he writes about this man's story, what he says is that he was filled. What does it say? He was filled with leprosy. And so the idea that Luke's trying to present when he's talking about this man, he's saying like, hey, he's not just has leprosy a little bit. Some of you watched The Chosen and you've seen this story actually play out and you see a man with some sores on him. It's not that. It was far worse than that. Luke is describing that he was not just starting leprosy. He's filled with it. It's covering his entire body and you can see it specifically. And so what Jesus gets angry at, and the scholars are all split on this because they don't actually know. It doesn't say he was angry at da-da-da-da. But they think one of the reasons he was angry is he just turns around, sees the man, and sees what the disease has done to him. And he's just filled with anger, not at the man, but at the disease and what it's ripped from this man. Like it's hurt him, it's stolen from him, it's made him look the way that he does and all those different things. And so if you ever have seen people that are filled with leprosy, I don't want to keep this up on the screen very long, but it looks like this. And so that's a face of someone that starts eating away at those things, and then it ultimately eats away at your, okay, get off of that, thank you. But that's what it does to you. And so imagine Jesus turning around and seeing this man, and he gets angry. He's like, I'm not angry at the man asking me for help. I'm angry that this thing is doing this to you. And when he's communicating to the man, it's like, look, I know this probably, you hate this. You hate what it's stolen from you. You hate what it's done to you. I hate it too. I share that. And some of you have issues and problems and you've been dealing with things and all this stuff and you're like, does God even care? And here, right now, he's trying to say like, I share your anger. I actually feel this with you and I'm angry about it as well. It's stolen from you. It's hurting you. And I'm angry that someone's trying to hurt you. And I'm angry that sin and brokenness has entered the world and evil has entered the world and that this has actually affected you. He's angry at what the disease has done for him. Other scholars say that he's angry, not at the man, but they say that he's angry. Go to the next slide. He's angry at the lie the leper believes because the leper assumes that he's not going to help. And so he's not angry. Again, he's not angry at the man. He's just angry at you think I won't help you. You think God won't help you. Like, I'm not mad at you. I just hate that lie got in your head, that it made you even question or wonder. It'd be like if somebody convinced my son, Teddy, my 7-year-old, convinced him that I didn't love him or something like that. And he came home and was like, Dad, do you love me? I'm like, I'm not angry at you for asking. I'm angry that would ever cross your mind. Like that you'd ever consider the fact that I didn't love you, that you're not a part of this family, that you're not my son. Like, I'm just, again, not at you. I'm angry at that kid that I can't probably say something to, that he would ever make you think something so destructive. But like, I'm just angry at that. And so Jesus begins with righteous anger. Like I'm angry, whether it's one or the other. I'm angry that this thing is hurting you, or I'm angry that you believe that I actually don't care anything about that. I'm not angry at you. I'm just angry at the stuff that's taking over your life. And so he begins with anger, again, to show the man, like, look, I feel deeply for you. And then the next thing that you see he does before he cleanses him, he touches him. Jesus touches him. Verse 41, he reached out his hand and touched the man. Now, there's a couple of reasons this is important. One is you were supposed to do a couple of things with lepers. Number one on the agenda was don't touch them. Like, don't get close to them. That's like number one. Don't do this. Don't get close to them. And so it's odd that Jesus touches this man. So go to the next slide here. You see some quotes that it says from different commentators. It says, according to Jewish law and customs, one had to keep 6 feet from a leper. If the wind blew toward a person from a leper, they had to keep 150 feet away. The only thing more defiling than contact with a leper would be contact with a dead body. And then the preacher's commentary says people avoided not only contact with the body, but also the shadows. Not just contact with the body, but with the shadows as well. And so it's odd that Jesus would be close enough to actually touch this man, because this is what most people did. But then the second thing, the thing for me is like, why, Jesus, why did you touch him? Why is that something that you do? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to touch him to heal him. You've healed people from afar. You've told people like, hey, go home, your daughter's well, just go home, don't worry about it. Like, you didn't touch her, you didn't touch him, you just spoke the word and the demons were driven out. You spoke the word and people were healed. Like, you don't even have to touch this man. You're not supposed to touch him, and you don't have to heal him. Why are you touching him? Why is this something you do? This is one of the only instances in Jesus' ministry where he doesn't have to touch a leper, and he's commanded not to pretty consistently by his culture, and he chooses to do it anyways. And I think the reason he tries to do this is because he's trying to make the man understand, like, I'm not only willing to help you, I desire to help you. Again, some of you have heard this story, but over Christmas, we took out this, what's it called? A snow globe that I got when I was a kid, but actually it's a new one that we had to buy because Teddy broke my last one. But he wanted to see it because my grandfather gave it to me. It was this awesome snow globe that I loved, and he wanted to see it one Christmas, so I gave it to him, and which was probably a bad idea, but I was like, you can hold it, but please don't drop it. And he was like, okay, Dad. Dropped it on the ground. And I was like, I just said. And it was like this family heirloom that had been passed anyways. And it broke. And I got sad and mad, and I didn't say anything to him, but he could tell, and so he runs away crying. And then eventually my wife goes and gets him and brings him back, and he asked the question, like, hey, Dad, can we be best friends again? Like, can we be best friends again? And he's like 5. Like, I'm like, and so, but I didn't just want to communicate to him, like, yeah, man, we're fine. Don't worry about it. Like, which would have been fine. Like, yes, we can be best friends. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I didn't do that. Like, I got down on my knees at his level, and I put my forehead to his forehead, and I was like, I want you to look me in the eyes, and I want to tell you something very clear. You are always my best friend. Like, you can't screw up big enough for our friendship to be hindered in any way. You are always my best friend, and I never want you to have to worry about that based on some of the things that you do wrong. And he was like, okay, can I move my forehead now? And I was like, yeah, you can move your forehead. But like the point, the whole reason I wanted to put my face up against his was not because it needed to happen. It was just to make the point clear. I want you to, I never want that question to ever go into your mind ever again. Does Dad, are we friends? Does he still love me? I never want that to be something you deal with. I want the assurance of, I promise you, look at me right here. Let's get close so that you know. I want to assure you, we're fine. Me and you are good, and we'll always be good. And my love for you isn't based on how you behave. And I think in the same way, Jesus is doing the exact same thing. No, I don't need to touch you. Yes, I'm commanded not to touch you. But imagine the scene where this man, they say that like no one has probably touched this man for years in his life. Everybody's kept either 6 feet or 100 feet away, and some have thrown rocks. That's been this man's primary experience with other people. And then all of a sudden you have this man walk up to you, and he puts his hand on your shoulder as you're kneeling down. And it's probably the first touch that he's felt in years. And it probably shocks him, like, whoa, somebody's touching me. I haven't felt somebody do that in years. But Jesus is trying to make this point, and he touches him, and I'm wondering if, like, he lifts his head to him, like, I want you to look up at me, like, I am willing to help you. This isn't just something that, like, yeah, you're fine, I'm willing, go for it. Go cleanse yourself, go to the temple, do whatever. Like, it's not that. It's like, I want you to be clear. I want you to know for a fact. Like, all I want to do is help you. I absolutely want it. You're wondering and assuming that I won't. And I want you to be very, very clear on something. I want to actually break into your life, and I actually do want to help you. I do want to do some of those things. And I think all of that stuff, all of that, his anger towards what he's dealing with and the fact that he touches him, what he's trying to help him to see is like, I want you to ditch your assumption that I don't want to help you. I never want you to ask again, am I willing? I want you to know I am always willing. Am I willing to help you? I just want you to be like, is he willing? Yes, he's always willing. He's like, I want that to be the common refrain. I want that to be in the mind of the people that I encounter. I want them to know without a shadow of a doubt. I don't just want to, I'm not just willing to, I actually want to. I desire to actually draw near you. I desire to actually help you. And I think he wants to leave no doubt in his mind. And I think he wants that for us as well. I think that if this man were to speak to us, the leper were to speak to us, cleansed and all, I think he'd be like, I don't know what I was worried about. He absolutely wants to break into your story as he did mine. And he actually does want to be someone who helps you and not someone that's like, I don't know, just figure it out on your own, just do that. It's like, that's not who he is. He wants to make sure that you know, I deeply, deeply, deeply want to help you. Psalm 46:1, the psalm is beautiful, but it starts by saying, the Lord God is our refuge and strength. He is our ever-present help in time of need. Ever-present help. This is how he wants to be known. Does he want to help me with the things that are going on in my life? It's like, yeah, he's an always present helper in the spaces where we need him. That's who he is. And so is he willing to help? This is how he wants to be known. This is a promise from the scriptures to you that, like, does God want to actually help me? I know he's powerful enough to help me. Does he want to help me? I think the answer consistently is like, yes. That's how I want to be known. I want you to think of me as the person that actually breaks into your life and helps you. This is why I also sent the Holy Spirit, who I called the helper. This is why I give you all these things. I actually genuinely want to help you. And I think for us, when you're sitting there thinking about your life and your story and what's going on, and you're going, I have needs, I have things where I need help. Does he want to help me? I think he wants to help you understand that, like, absolutely. He definitely wants to break into your story, and he definitely wants to help you. And I think that's what he does for the man. He doesn't just heal him and cast him off. He's like, I need you to know and never wonder again. You'll never have to wonder. I really, really, really care about you, and I really want to help. And so, Hannah, you guys can come forward. My question for you, for everybody in the room, is if this is true, if he's not only powerful enough to help you, but he's also very, very more than willing. He actually desires to help you. Where do you need help in your life right now? Like, where is the space in your world right now with your family, with your brain, with your heart, with your relationships, your friendships, your school, your sport, your stuff? Everything that's going on in your life, where do you need God to actually help you? Where do you need someone who's always present and at any given moment is like, I'm not just willing, I'm actually deeply available. I'm desperate to help you. I want to, and I want you to know that. I'm angry with the things that you're angry at. I'm saddened by the things that you are also saddened about. And I'm broken over the things that have broken you. And I deeply, deeply, deeply want to help. And if Jesus is saying that to you, like, where do you need his help? Where do you need him to break into your life? And what I want to close by doing is really just praying for you. But if you have something, if you're like, it's 2023, it's a new year, and you're like, I'm trying to fix this stuff for myself, and I'm going to try and do it myself. If that's where you're at, you're trying to do that, but now you're like, okay, God, I believe that you're powerful enough to do that. I wondered if you would actually do anything about it, but now I'm hopefully believing that you're actually willing to do that. If that's where you're at, like, I know he's powerful enough, and now I think that he actually does want to help because he seems to be willing to help those who are in need and wants to be known as someone who's an ever-present help in time of need. I would just love to pray for you, to ask him to actually help you. And so if you have something in your mind right now that came to your mind, like, where do you need help? And it came immediately into your mind and you have one, could you just lift a hand just so that I could pray for you? If you have something that's like, I actually need help in this thing specifically. Thank you. Anybody else got something we need God to break in? Okay, awesome. Okay. Got you, thanks. Thanks. Thanks, bro. Got you. Thanks. All right, I see you. I realize this is more, and you don't have to. Thank you. But again, I'm not forcing anybody to do anything, but if you do have something like that, just because I couldn't see all the hands, would you just stand up where you're at? If you're like, I raised my hand, would you stand up where you're at in front of everybody? I know that's awkward. The truth is about those standing up, I'm like, everybody's got problems, but that's okay. What I'd love, thank you for having the faith to do that, to stand up. I'd love leaders, now that they're standing, you can see them. If you're a leader in the room, if you could just place a hand on somebody, just on their, Jesus touched the leper. I just want to pray for him to actually do those things in your life as well. Some of the things the way that Jesus helps, sometimes his default is healing. Like we have standing orders to go and heal the sick. His default is healing. But then sometimes he doesn't just take away the issue. Sometimes it's like the Apostle Paul where he says, like, look, I'm not going to take away your problem, but I promise you my grace is sufficient to carry you and to sustain you. And so no, your issue isn't going away, but I'm right there with you and I'm going to carry you through the whole thing. And so I want to pray for those things. This is how he helps. Sometimes he just removes that thing from your life. And sometimes he's like, I promise to be with you and to carry you through this, even though it's not going to go away. I wanted him to take away my parents' divorce. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to go away. But I swear by all of my promises that I will carry you through the entire thing and I will redeem that story. And I think for many of you, sometimes he doesn't just remove it. Sometimes he just says, like, look, I promise I'm going to be right there with you. I'm going to carry you. My power will be perfected when you're weak. But I promise never to leave. I'll be right there. Father, I pray for these students who lifted their hands and who stood up. Lord, you're not only deeply capable and powerful beyond measure. You spoke and creation came into existence. Everything was created that we see because you just spoke the words. You reached out your hand to heal the brokenhearted and to heal the lepers and to heal the blind and the lame and the sick and the deaf and the mute and the paralytics and all the rest of it, Father. You did all of those things. Your power. You made my son speak. You have current power, not just old power, but current, real power and the ability to help. Lord, you can take the minds of these students that are just broken and bent on hurting themselves, and you can reform those things and take away those thoughts. Lord, you can snatch that stuff from them and return to them a mind that was innocent, again, the way they felt when they were kids and they experienced joy. Lord, you can turn all those things back. And so, God, I just pray, Lord, that their minds would be healed. I pray that their bodies would be healed. Lord, for the ways in which they need your help, God, that you would break in. You are willing. I pray that you would move in power in their lives, that they would see you. And if you just choose to take it away, Lord, we're grateful. And we praise you for that. And for those that you want, like your favorite apostle, to walk through the darkness, knowing that you're holding them, that you're carrying them, that you're going to guide them through, and that your power will be on display in their lives even while they experience weakness. God, I pray that you would allow them to experience that. God, I pray that you would break in to their lives and into their story. I pray that you would help them the way that you did this man who knelt before you. I pray that you would remind them that you feel what they feel. And that with everything that you got, that you're reaching out to let them know that I don't just want to help. I'm so desirous. I'm hungry to help you. God, I pray that they would know that. And that you would break into their lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. We're going to respond with singing, so I just encourage everybody to stand up.
I heard